So, in this auspicious month of August, especially August 15th, which the mother has said, it is the day of great amnesties, when all past errors can be effaced completely. That's what, these are her words. So, in this auspicious months, our readings from essays on the Gita have very naturally come to this point of Avatarhood, the 3 chapters on the Avatar, for this month. And personally, I take it as a sign that it is a special blessing of the Mother and Sri Aurobindo on this project. Because there is a harmony of events, harmony of circumstances, and so on and so forth. Avatarhood in the Indian setting is well known, though there are different kinds of understanding that or conceptions that people have about this idea of avatarhood. So one conception, which is a common conception, is that any person of preeminence is an avatar. It's a very loose conception, and it's based on the fact that any forward march, evolutionary march included, of course, there are some who spearhead the journey. So nowadays we have all these drone views of Mount Everest and people climbing, but always one will remember the first man. It's also known as Hillary Step when you climb Mount Everest, because he was the first man who crossed the barrier and he made it very easy for everybody. Similarly, first man on moon. After that we had so many lunar missions. So the first man who crosses a certain barrier, and this barrier is always a dual barrier. There is a physical barrier, but even before the physical barrier, there is the psychological barrier. It's impossible. There has to be some person who embodies the spirit of forward movement or evolution, and he believes that this is possible. And then he takes that forward step. Of course, behind him there is a lot of preparation. Maybe some people tried, maybe some people thought, but they couldn't. So always we'll see in evolution this process in which there are attempts, half-hearted attempts, and then there is a collapse, and then there is an attempt again, but then suddenly we'll see a manifestation that crosses that barrier. And once it crosses that barrier, then it becomes easier for all the rest. Evolution is known to take place like that. It's called a slow pace, and then the leap. The leap is called as hour of God. And Sri Aurobindo and the mothers say that this is an hour of God, and Sri Aurobindo is the avatar of the new age. And in his symbol itself we can see that there is this flower, lotus flower, lovely flower blooming today in front of or by the side of Sri Aurobindo's mighty presence, august presence. And it's the word used by the mother is, the meaning of this flower, red lotus, is avatar. We see in Sri Aurobindo's symbol. Somehow Sri Aurobindo's devotees also sometimes shy away from this, because you're not supposed to speak about avatar. But there is a lot of meaning in the life of the avatar, and the first very significance is that this is the minimum of significance. As we read, that he is the trend setter, he is the exemplar. Because we all look for examples. So we look for example, who has done this? And we see this in the life of all the avatars. We see in the life of Rama. He does certain things which nobody had dreamed of. Challenging Ravan over, simply has done, he has taken away his wife, but for the sake of Dharma he challenges. He renounces the kingdom and walks away. He sets a very high standard for mankind. A standard which even now is difficult to cross, because he sets the standard that you may have unlimited powers and yet you must learn how to limit it by maryada of dharma. This is, even people get a little power. And as I was discussing, that the security guard has little power. And see how he behaves. You get down, you walk. I don't care. I mean, it's so strange, but that's how human nature is. Just a little power. And people start behaving as if, they are Lord of the worlds. So on one side we see people in that age when there is, Ravan also is very powerful and he believes that I am all powerful, so I can do whatever I feel like. No, why I said, because I was reminded of the story of Jai Vijay on the gates. So once this happened with me also, coming to Auroville 3 times, the guard stops, said, no, I'll not let you in. I said, it's my talk. No, I won't let you in. So once invited by the secretary and the same thing. So I just went across. I said, do what you want. So somebody stopped me on the way. I didn't know. So this is something that a barrier has to be crossed. And when the avatar, when Rama does it, then it is like, yes, any amount of power we may have, but still we have to practice dharma. That's why he is Ram, Maryada Purushottam. He is Purushottam, the best Uttam Purusha of the Gita, the highest. And yet he follows Maryada, and his Maryada is self-limited. There are no rules outside. That is dharma. So he establishes a way of life which is so difficult to cross even today. Shri Krishna comes. He sets a new dharma. Because Ram has set dharma which he knew, in this age, which will be even worse. So Sri Krishna also establishes dharma, which is consistent with the age and its complexities, where the very word of dharma now is being misused. For Ravan it was very simple. What I do is dharma. But in Mahabharata times, everybody was doing wrong in the name of dharma. So it's a strange situation. So Sri Krishna had to cross that barrier. And he crosses that barrier. For example, even as a child, he shows that however great a king may be, Kansa is a great king. But he's great king in the sense, powerful king, mighty king. But Sri Krishna says, no, you can't tax people arbitrarily. Because in his kingdom or in his little Rajya, the tax is all other people have to give 80% of the milk they have to send to Kansa. And so Krishna says that's not acceptable. But who will fight against Kansa? So he starts that matka, whole thing that we practice without knowing the whole context. He goes to houses, brings down that makhan which is on top and shares with everybody. So people are very annoyed. They say, we are supposed to, we are ready to share our portion, but this is supposed to go to the king. He'll be very angry. And Krishna says, let him be angry, we'll see that. We'll deal with that later. And that's how he starts distributing makhan, butter, with everybody equally. So he sets another yardstick and standard. He teaches people not to be afraid of anything when you are on the path of truth and right. So we see that he sets another standard altogether. Even if your own family people, Ram establishes the family system. Family is everything. For Sri Krishna, the nation is everything. And then we see now another revolutionary juncture, and that's when Sri Aurobindo comes and he says, God is everything. So invade entire world, consciousness, nation, family, everything should be invaded by that divine presence. Every field of activity should be invaded by the divine presence. But who will set the example? We see the example set by themselves. So he becomes an exemplar of how we should be. When we look at Mother's life, especially Sri Aurobindo's life, he is in the revolutionary activity, engaged in every kind of work. And yet, Sri Aurobindo is into yoga. And the mother even more, playing tennis at the age of 70, starting in mega project. How she does it, how she was dealing with people, it's something very wonderful. When we read mothers dealing with community affairs in Auroville, for example, how she was dealing, then we get a hint of how we should be looking at her. When she would hear the problems of one person and another person, how she would deal with it. So she has left a living example. So this is the first reason why the life of Avatar is important for us. He is the exemplar. Second thing is that, as we said, he breaks a critical barrier in the human mind and human consciousness and thereby opens doors to a new possibility. So, what was the barrier that Rama broke? We are taking these three examples. Rama broke the barrier that the Asura is invincible. He said, no, Dharma is invincible. What is the barrier that Sri Krishna broke? You can live normally and yet live in freedom and delight. The mother says that that was Krishna's mission to manifest. You can live in freedom and delight, live normally. You don't have to do something unusual, go to a forest, go to a cave, go to a, because those examples cannot be replicated. While it's okay, people going into forests and caves. That's why I always say that, life of these people who have spent 17 years in Himalayas doesn't interest, at least it never interested me. When people say, I went to a Guruji, 10 years I was in a cave. I mean, it's okay, good for you. But I can't go to a cave, or an average person cannot go into a cave. It's fine for you. Sri Aurobindo, even while here, he has engaged himself, kept abreast with all the affairs of the world. He had not shut himself into a... That's why when people use the word Pondicherry as his cave of tapasya, it is more correctly his seat of tapasya. So he chose it as a seat. So this, he breaks a barrier. What is the barrier that Sri Aurobindo and the mother break? Sri Aurobindo and the mother broke this barrier that, this world can become divine. How to live divinely. Sri Krishna came to teach us how to live freely, with delight, even in the battlefield. And Sri Aurobindo and the mother teach us how to live divinely, engaged in all kinds of activities. And that's why in the ashram and Auroville we see all kinds of activities which are represented. So they break a critical barrier in the human consciousness and thereby make it possible. Third is because when the divine takes on a human body. Now, this is an occult truth but easy to understand. And yogis know it that if there is an object which is used by someone, it carries the imprint. And actually, if there is a kind of super science which probably may develop someday, it can retrieve those imprints. Now, something like that happens. For instance, on the trees, you can know how many years old the tree is because there are imprints. So there are imprints of consciousness, and this is an occult truth which has been known for a long time, that there are swords which are not meant to be touched, because if you touch it, all the things inside, the deeds which has been done through it, the user, his imprints are there, and they are likely to inspire us, instigate us maybe, to engage with the same deed. So, this line that we draw between inanimate and animate things, living and non-living, is a false line. It is only a practical line. But the imprints remain, imprints of consciousness. That's why Sri Aurobindo and the mother's relics have such a meaning. That's why everything they have touched has a meaning, everything they've used, and that's why they gave also freely. It is not a religious act. It's not out of sentimentality. And I have seen such examples, which I don't want to go into because that's a whole story. Something they have touched, something they have held. Even just keeping the book Savitri by the side, or their photographs. It's not sentimentality or simply just a remembrance that you bow down. The photographs carry something of their imprint. They are letters of Sri Aurobindo. That photographs of the mother, he is too gentle to speak about himself, gentlemanly. Photographs of the mother carry something of her presence in it. That's why there is a difference between photograph and a sketch. However good the sketch may be. Photograph is original. Something of her presence is there. Sketch can be appreciated, it could be a remembrance, whatever. It carries, and every photograph for that matter, carries something of the imprint of that person. That's why one has to be signature. It carries the imprint. That's how Sri Aurobindo says that when we sign, we transmit a spiritual force into it. Now, if this be so, what imprint have they left on a material body? And since all matter is at its bottom continuous, in fact everything in life, living beings at some level are continuous because that's how you have the chain. There is a connectivity. So imagine that physical body, any body which they have touched, which is their own physical bodies. As Sri Aurobindo said it humorously, you would agree that I have at least some matter in me. Now, the moment the body receives this imprint and the avatar withdraws, let's say after 70 years or 80 years or 90 years, now matter has received this imprint which will continue. It's the imprint of the immortal. That's why when Sri Aurobindo's body was being interred in the Samadhi, and someone wrote for newspaper purposes, when 9th December it was decided to intern the body in the Samadhi, he wrote, the mortal remains of Sri Aurobindo will be interred in the Samadhi on 9th December at so and so time, for press release, and sent it to mother as was the way for approval. Mother looked at it. She cut off with a red pen the entire thing. And she wrote only one line by its side. There is nothing mortal about Sri Aurobindo. Now people would say, oh, this is emotional. This is a very deep truth. Matter itself, if we go to the root of it, is it really mortal? It simply changes form. From the gross, it becomes more subtle. That's the truth. So, they have left their imprint on the physical matter of this earth. And this imprint means matter has come in contact with the divine consciousness, its fuller manifestation, tasted the nectar, and it is bound to seek it more and more. It's bound to move in that direction. They have secured the supramental evolution by the very fact that they took a human body. And that's why the mother says every time the divine takes a human body, it's with this purpose of transforming matter. Otherwise, he can do many things from above, most of the things. But putting an imprint on matter is one of the main reasons why he assumes a human body. And even if there is nobody in the world who recognizes, there is a very beautiful passage of the mother, even if nobody knows the avatar, he would still do his work and go. Because he left an imprint on matter. Fourth, the soul of the avatar, when it leaves the atmosphere, all this is revealed in the Gita itself. I will read it, but just to emphasize that point. When he leaves the body, he continues to remain and preside over the evolution of the earth till that purpose is fulfilled. This also there in this, those who are conversant with Indian tradition, it's very much there. Parshuram stays till Rama is there and then he reveals. Outwardly, you may physically die, but something of you, of the avatar, because he is the divine descent for earth, so it continues to be there. That's why when the mother says that, Sri Aurobindo has promised us, he has assured us that he will continue to be here not just as a witness and a silent consciousness, but as a dynamic presence. And he will continue to do whatever is necessary for the evolution of the earth. We do not see it. Whose problem is it? Avatars or man's? That's we have to determine. And that's what the Gita says. When the divine takes a human body, there is a sign. And this sign, who can see? He says, only those with an awakened soul. The asura cannot see it. That's what we see in the body of always Ravan is in conflict. Is he man? Is he divine? Is he man? Is he divine? But there were others. Shabri, she recognizes divine. Ahilya recognizes divine. Several others recognize the divine. But there are many others who are wondering, human. So Sri Aurobindo says avatar is always a dual phenomena. There is the human and there is the divine. And why is it so? Because he has to show us, he has to give us his own example. If he comes and he uses the word, he is not a thaumaturge, magician who does miracles. And he answers this objection people raise against Christ, that well, if he is God, why didn't he escape from the cross? Well, precisely because he didn't escape from the cross, he set the example that how, to what degree love and compassion can reach. And that's why he is God. So look at the whole logic. That if the avatar were to do some arbitrary miracles, he does. Miracles happen always wherever there is the divine consciousness. But that's not how the avatar acts. Avatar acts to change us. If it does by arbitrary miracles, then it's not an example for us. We'll become like dependent children all the time. But while we are dependent children, in one level, but the divine also wants us to grow into his divinity. So this is the entire scenario in which the avatarhood has to be seen. And we read a few things last time. And today we read something from this chapter, next chapter, the process of avatarhood. And it starts with how we have conceived avatarhood. One, as I said, are men of preeminence. But in the Gita's language, they are Vibhutis and not avatars. So what is the difference between Vibhuti and avatar? In Vibhuti, there is something of the divine afflatus which is felt in their deeds. Why? Because nature in them is flooded with the light of the divine. Because through evolution, they have reached a point, or because something in their nature is very suitable for the divine to act through them. So these vibhutis have been always there. And here Sri Krishna gives some examples, as Ushanas, the poet, or Carlyle, who has given, in his sense, hero. So in India specifically, where the concept of vibhuti is very, very strong, there is the tendency to hero worship. And it's not a bad thing, because you need to have some living examples. When you don't have such living examples, like today we see with children, so they take, whom do they turn towards as a hero? The real heroes, not the real heroes. So especially when one is growing up, one needs to have those living legends, heroes, whose life, when we read, we feel inspired. Many of us, I personally have been very inspired reading lives of, even Arjun. I had this great dream, that's how one should be. Later on, you read about Shivaji, you read about Maharana Pratap, you read about Prithviraj Chauhan, and you feel inspired. This is how one should be. But when you don't expose children to that, you have whom? The real heroes, which are neither heroes, nor they are real life situations through which they are moving. It's all created situations. So this exceptional man, the hero, the person in whom we see an abundance of the divine energy flowing through their mind or life or body, which can sometimes also lead to certain defects of nature. That also Sri Aurobindo says at one point of time, because the mold is broken. In a genius, the mold gets broken because of this excess of divine energy. And it may flow into some unregulated channels. And yet he is hero. And that's why when we look at the life of Arjun, he is not a saintly person. Far from it. He is a very good, he is excellent, he is professional to the ultimate, he is surrendered to the divine. He is the hero man for the battle of Kurukshetra, chosen by Sri Krishna. But if you want to analyze in terms of the character, then you'll see Yudhishthir, you'll have Vidur, you will even have Bhishma and Dronacharya and all these people. But hero is Arjun in the battlefield. He is chosen. Because he has that something extra which flows through him. This abundance. And that's what Sri Aurobindo answered about Winston Churchill, about some of these who were vibhutis in the modern age, Shakespeare, Napoleon. Because we are looking for a moral character in a vibhuti. Vibhuti is not an exemplar of morality. Unless there can be a vibhuti who is an exemplar of morality. That's also is possible. But vibhutis are exemplar of some particular aspect of the divine which they manifest in life. And through that they help the march of mankind. They spearhead the human journey. But they are not avatars in the language of the Gita. Because vibhutis are through the process of evolution they have come up. And the mold may be broken, as we have seen. So who is the avatar? There is another tendency to understand anyone who is united with God is avatar. But the Gita makes a distinction. United with God, it uses the word Brahmabhut. Full of God, full of God. But that's not, the Supreme is not Brahman, he is Purushottam. Purushottam, assuming a human body, is very different from a person being full of the Brahman consciousness. So again, that is not the avatar. It is also possible that when one is full of God, God may take possession at points of time, and the person may become almost in his most outward life also, as if something of that divine is expressing through him. And that may be called as some kind of an avatar, but even that is not the language of the Gita, doesn't say that. The example of this third category is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So when he was in those states of ecstasy, and there is a one particular moment when he almost picks up the chakra, and he is in that mood of Shri Krishna where on battlefield he says, I am time the destroyer. And then everybody begins to, tremble, even his devotees, even his disciples. So even that is not the avatar. So what is the avatar? And this is important as we read this, because very often we compare Sri Aurobindo. Sri Aurobindo is not comparable. This is not because of human sentiment, but because the avatar is not comparable even to a Vibhuti. You may do it, but there is something that the avatar does which nobody else can do. Later on, people will follow that path and do that. So sometimes I find it very strange. It's like a lack of understanding when we compare Sri Aurobindo to a thinker, philosopher, and we write things like situating Sri Aurobindo and Carl Jung. And then people say that there are thoughts similar. I said, you may have all the similar thoughts, and yet there is the secret which you have not understood. Avatar comes to imprint matter with a new possibility. And that nobody else can do except the divine assuming a human body. Now, I'm not saying people shouldn't do it. It's their wish list. If you want to do it, it's your business. But we must know the difference between, as they say, between apples and oranges. I mean, both are good, but apple keeps the doctor away, so do oranges, maybe. But there is a difference. So we must know the avatar is the avatar. So we'll read just a few passages. And first he speaks about the human nature. In a certain sense, every human being, that's another conception, is an avatar of God. In the sense that there is a descent of God, something of God is in all of us, which is what is the soul. But that's not how the word avatar is going to be used. But yes, we are all avatar of God. And in that sense, that the soul is a descent from the divine. Mamaya Vansh, as the Gita puts it. But it is acting under gross limitations of nature. So it is divine, but it's like in that Greek tragedy, Oedipus, he is a prince, but he doesn't know he is a prince. So we have those stories that there is a prince who doesn't know he is a prince. So the stamp of that limitation, it's the very first passage where he describes the limitation of the human birth, where we have the descent of something of the divine within. The stamp of that limitation is an ignorance by which he forgets not only the Godhead from which he came forth, but the Godhead which is always within him, there living in the secret heart of his own nature, there burning like a veiled fire on the inner altar in his own temple house of human consciousness. He is ignorant, he is human being. So every human birth in a certain sense is a portion of the divine. But we don't know. We not only don't know that we are portions of the divine, we take it as an article of faith. We don't even know the divine who is seated within the heart. He is ignorant because there is upon the eyes of his soul and all his organs the seal of that nature, Prakriti, Maya, by which he has been put forth into manifestation out of God's eternal being. And then there is such a beautiful simile Sri Aurobindo gives. She has minted him like a coin out of the precious metal of the divine substance, but overlaid with a strong coating of the alloy of her phenomenal qualities, stamped with her own stamp and mark of animal humanity. And although the secret sign of the Godhead is there, it is at first indistinguishable and always with difficulty decipherable, not to be really discovered except by that initiation into the mystery of our own being, which distinguishes a Godward from an earthward humanity. So there is this coin from the same substance, maybe gold, maybe silver, maybe paper, And it's the same, but there is a stamp. This has so much value. So your value has been limited. And then there is on top of it some signature or something will be there. So it is further limited. How it gets limited? So we have, take for instance the Indian rupee. So it's made of the same paper. So you have 500 rupees. Sometimes it can be very confusing. It may look like $100 note. So if you keep them together, you may just end up giving it. Or you have 50 rupees. They are made of the same paper. But you have, how it is limited? Somebody has put it 50 or 100 or 500. Now it is limited. You can't say it's the same paper, therefore I can use it any which way. Then there is the second limitation. Second limitation comes because it is written there, I promise to pay the bearer. And who is promising? The RBI of India. And below that, there is the signature of Mahatma Gandhi. Now, I can't take this to Dubai and say, look here, please accept it. Why? Because now there is second level of limitation. So he says there is a limitation of the ignorance. It limits the qualities and further puts a seal. It will only within a narrow range it will function. For instance, love. First it's limited to a animal-human love. And then it is limited because of ignorance only within my physical family. So nature puts a double limitation and it's difficult enough to get rid of that. So he says, yes, it is of the same mint but different. But in the avatar, the divinely born man, so there is a difference. It's not a human evolving to the divine, but a divinely born man. The real substance shines through the coating. The mark of the seal is there only for form. The vision is that of the secret Godhead. The power of the life is that of the secret Godhead. And it breaks through the seals of the assumed human nature. The sign of the Godhead, an inner soul sign, not outward, not physical, stands out legible for all to read who care to see or who can see. For the asuric nature is always blind to these things. It sees the body and not the soul. Now you see, it's very interesting. Take the story of Christianity. When Christ is born, there are three Maggies who come all the way from east. And the story goes, they have seen the star. And they understand that here the Savior is born. Not everybody around him recognizes. The story itself is very interesting. It gives the secret of Avatarhood. It's a virgin birth. So it's from a pure nature that he is entering into the human body. So same thing we read about Buddha. Buddha is a virgin birth. So virgin birth here means that a nature which is unpolluted, uncorrupted, undefiled, that nature is entering and assuming a human body. This is what we'll explain. But these stories, their meaning has been lost and they've been turned into simply stories where the truth is lost. So Sri Aurobindo will reveal to us one by one. So there is always a sign, but who can recognize? Only those with an awakened soul. We know in the case of Christ, and they bring those three gifts, frankincense, myrrh and gold, and Mother gives the meaning of all these things. Gold is supramental knowledge, and frankincense is, of course, the psychological perfection, and myrrh. So there are these, signs which some can recognize. When Krishna is born, there are signs. Yamuna recognizes, Yamuna is in spirit, it wants to touch the feet of Krishna. Otherwise, all others forget. Even Devaki and Vasudev forget what has happened. And all nature is suddenly delighted. So people in Braj are experiencing strange symptoms. Sri Aurobindo describes about mother's birth. All nature was at beauty's festival. And when mother is born, she is born in a place which is next to a church. But the wall is adjacent. And the time when she is born, 10:30 a.m., that very moment, temple, the church bells are going on. They are suddenly, as if something is declaring that here someone has come. At the age of 2, her physical mother asks her, you are sitting as if the burden of the whole world is upon you. 5, when she is sitting in a chair. And she suddenly says, yes, the burden of the whole world is upon me. Those utterances will be there. The Shakti. She says, first thing that she became conscious of is the Shakti. Then later on, the instruments have to develop and adapt slowly. We see the same thing in the story of Rama. And that's how it is described, Bhai Pragat Kripala Deen Dayala. The story of Krishna. Suddenly, Ma Yashoda sees in his mouth and sees the entire cosmos. With Sri Aurobindo, very interesting. Because Sri Aurobindo is a gentleman, he doesn't speak much. What happened at his birth? So people have this idea that he is an evolutionary being, but the mother is the avatar. Because mother's life is very clear. Are bhai, Sri Aurobindo is not the type who will ever say what happened. But there are two hints that he has given. They are very interesting. Passing hints he has given. And why his name itself was kept as Aurobindo Ghosh. You see, his name was kept as Lotus. You try to Google search, was there anybody with the name Aurobindo, Sri Aurobindo for us, ever before Sri Aurobindo's coming? And Sri Aurobindo humorously mentions, now there are so many of them. But why his father kept the name? He felt that his child is very unusual. Just as Divine Mother's mother felt that this child of mine, she must be the best in the whole world. She had this urge. Same with Sri Aurobindo, the name has been kept very intuitively, the name of the avatar. And then again he mentions what happened during his childhood. We don't know because Sri Aurobindo didn't say much. But he describes one experience at 7. He says when he was lying down, this is before he goes to England, and he felt the darkness of the entire world is as if invading him. Sign of the avatar. Just like Putana coming to slay the baby Krishna. It recognizes here is the avatar. Or shall we say, to get converted. All this darkness. And he says, it left me only when I came back to India. And once again he set his foot on Apollo Bandar. Mother India recognizes he is the one destined to be the savior. And she greets him, welcomes him with a vast calm. When he is at 10, he writes a poem where he describes the birth of the savior, the birth of light in this world of darkness, and how his presence is going to redeem the world at the age of 10. So there are signs, but the asuric nature cannot recognize. The asura cannot recognize even when the divine is present. Even when they are physically present. People would say, oh, they have the same body like ours. But time to time, the divinity will shine through the cloak. Why? Because it is a virgin birth. It is a birth from the supernature pressing upon this nature. So nature has to adapt to this great descent. It is subservient to the divine, not like us where it is, the divine element in us is apparently conquered by nature. Here the nature is subservient to the divine. He has veiled himself deliberately, but it is bound to manifest over a period of time. The mother says, I have put so many veils around myself because people can't behold her. That's why the mother and Sri Aurobindo, those few moments of darshan were enough to change people's life. During those moments, they would suddenly remove the veil and so people can experience something of their touch. Not by evolution, the last line on this page, not by evolution or ascent like the ordinary man, the Gita seems to tell us, not by growing into the divine birth, but by a direct descent into the stuff of humanity and taking up of its molds. So this is the divine birth and this the avatar. Now he says some very interesting things. Next passage on page 159. But it is to assist that ascent or evolution the descent is made or accepted. See, the divine doesn't leave us to our own resources. He is there. Not only within us, but during critical moments he comes and leads the human march, assuming a human body. This is something so beautiful that we are not left helplessly. So that man may see what that is and take courage to grow into it. So now people talk about, worldly life also being commensurate with spiritual life. Now this has become a catchphrase. The word transformation, the other day I was reading somebody talking about a transformed earth and transformed heaven. Well, many such things will come, but where is the origin? First time, Sri Aurobindo uses this word transformation in this special sense. First time he uses the word divine life. Of course, later on, even very few people know that the word integral yoga and divine life were usurped already by a group, and it was. I had the fortune or misfortune in South Africa to visit. I was asked to give a talk. So when I went there, integral yoga and divine life, I said, "What am I? Some probably Sri Aurobindo center." No, no, no. And all sannyasi type people sitting there. I said, very strange. But now people are talking about all this. The word integral is used as freely. It's okay. At least the word is being used. But first time they speak about the integral realization, the divine life. So when they set this example, humanity can follow it. Otherwise, who could imagine that life on earth could be redeemed? To exemplify the possibility of the divine manifest in the human being. It is also, now here comes that interesting part, it is also to leave the influence of that manifestation vibrating in the earth nature and the soul of that manifestation presiding over its upward endeavor. Ever anyone raises a question about Sri Aurobindo's presence or mother's presence, they have gone. This one line is enough. That's why Sri Aurobindo would speak of Pondicherry in this way. He would say, there are a number of disciples outside, but we always tell them to come again and again here to this place of central influence. And the mother speaks of Samadhi in similar words. It is the place of central influence where every particle is vibrating with the intensity of the supramental light and consciousness. So, he leaves that influence. It is his gift, which we don't even recognize, on matter stamp. And the second part, and his soul presiding over its upward endeavor. That means they don't leave and go away. The divine has entered, he continues to be there, and he continues to be there and exercise his influence to change earthly life. This is true even of great beings for some centuries. Swami Vivekananda coming to Sri Aurobindo, Sri Krishna's manifestations in countless years and yogis. So Sri Aurobindo Leela has just begun. More and more of it will come forward. This is the second part. To leave the influence of that manifestation vibrating in the earth nature and the soul of that manifestation presiding over its upward endeavor. So the yug belongs to Sri Aurobindo and he continues to preside over it. It is to give a spiritual mold of divine manhood into which the seeking soul of the human being can cast itself. So it becomes for us a direct example that this is the mold in which we can cast. So we have very nice bhajan of Sri Aurobindo where these lines are mentioned. Dheer, Veer, Gambhir, Sri Aurobindo Jai Jaykar Ho. I love these lines. Dheer. Look at his infinite patience. What must have been that life in Pondicherry, where on one side the French government, on other side the British government, and all these things going around, and he's engaged. Dheer. He's the ultimate exemplar of what it means to be patient, divine patience. And of course, the ultimate example of divine patience is dealing with all of us. That's a living example. All the nutcases he has called all of us, and yet he continues to pour his love. Over a period of time, we realize. So, Dheer, Veer, whatever be the obstacles on the path. At one place, Sri Aurobindo says, even if I knew that all ended in a smash, I would look beyond the smash to the new creation. This is called courage and heroism. Even if you tell me it is all going to fail. You read in God's labor, no? That Sri Aurobindo says that, oh, how they mock at me, mock and sneer at me, both men and all these asuric beings. They say it is a shimra. So many people, even that time, even now, even disciples, oh, this is all shimra. And he continues, this is called Dhir, Veer, Gambhir, depths. If you look at Sri Aurobindo's eyes, you feel you are into that pool of infinity. With mother's eyes, looks like love is pouring onto you. Can you bear it? Like Niagara. That power which comes. And Sri Aurobindo's eyes, you can lose yourself and the world can be lost. So Dhir, Veer, Gambhir. So he casts a mold into which we have to grow. So, further, it is to give a spiritual mold of divine manhood into which the seeking soul of the human being can cast itself. It is to give a dharma, a religion. But what dharma he has given? Not a Sri Aurobindo religion, but something else. Not a mere creed, but a method of inner and outer living. That's what is dharma. So this word creates a lot of confusion. For instance, when the mother said no religions. So people feel that means I should not bow down before the picture of Mother and Sri Aurobindo. I should not put those photographs because it's religion. But Sri Aurobindo and the mother both have described the difference between religion and religiosity. Religiosity is outward ritual without any feeling inside it. Not that they have said it should be banned. Yesterday somebody was saying that no, mind is not capable of knowing anything. So now see how falsehood enters. So this part is okay, drawn from Sri Aurobindo. Therefore, we must have number of opinions from people and try to arrive at knowledge by incorporating different viewpoints. This is not what Sri Aurobindo and the mother say. It's about going beyond the mind, but using mind as a tool to leap beyond. See how half-truths are so dangerous. So the person was telling me that, see how much it resonates. I said, nothing resonates, falsehood. I said, how? I said, this is the liberal woke thought. How? I said, see, Vrahatam is one aspect of truth. But there is also Satyam and Ritam. If you remove Satyam and Ritam, which means Satyam is truth, the bedrock of truth. You say mind is not all, and again you are making the bedrock is nothing else but the human. Human cannot become the basis of creation. So, Satyam is the divine consciousness. When you are in that consciousness, vast as the divine is vast. But also Ritam. Ritam is the right arrangement of things in space and time. Ritam is directly connected with Dharma. You can't say everything is everywhere and create a nice khichdi. One day khichdi is fine. Maybe 2 days, 3 days. But if every day if you eat khichdi with whatever variation, after some time you will tell your host that, can we have a little variety? So it's not uniformity. So Satyam, Ritam is rhythm. Everything has its right place, right season, right time, right space, and it should be placed accordingly. Satyam, Ritam, Brihatam. So we see that in Sri Aurobindo and the mother's example. So did the mother, how she dealt with different people differently. She was not dealing with everybody as if everything is the same. And she says, why should it be so? Shri Krishna, how he deals with different, even Vali can't understand. He says, you killed me but saved Sugriv. Why did you do this? You are partial. Sri Krishna, same thing. You are partial to Arjuna. He says, yes. It is the demand of the Dharma. I am partial only to Dharma, and whatever helps Dharma in the forward march, that's what is important. So we see here he gives the Dharma. What is Dharma? Dharma or religion is not a creed but a method of inner and outer living. Isn't it part of outer living to connect with the divine even outwardly, because my body wants to participate in my inner surrender. So when I bow down at the Samadhi, my body takes a joy. That's how Mother and Sri Aurobindo have described. It takes a joy that it is participating in the inner movement of giving itself. That's how we have to understand this Dharma. You can't say that, oh, he is bowing down, he is making a religion out of things. Then where is the freedom? Problem is if he says everybody should bow down, like some mothers come, make their child forcibly put at the Samadhi, bow down. No, that's obviously. But there is the spontaneous urge to give yourself to the divine. Mother says sometimes lying prostrate, holding the divine, all kinds of things, different ways. The body has to participate. So, inner and outer living both. It's not just about inner living. All is inside, self is inside, soul is inside, God is inside. Then at the end, world is meaningless because world is outside. So that's what inner and outer living. A way, a rule and law of self-molding. So there is a way. It's not like any which way. There is a rule of molding, self-discipline, self-mastery, humility before the divine. All this is part of the way. A rule and law of self-molding by which he can grow towards divinity. And of course, it is true, since this growth, this ascent is no mere isolated and individual phenomenon, but like all in the divine world activities, a collective business. A work and the work for the race, to assist the human march, to hold it together in a great crisis. So the divine comes and look at, and people speak about Sri Aurobindo, look at the world 100 years back and what crisis it was facing in the world situation. Of course, we'll say we are facing crisis, but look at 100 years back. Then we will look like we are breathing a very, much more freer existence. Challenges are there. Until the evolution is complete, we'll face challenges. But 50 years back, in India, and maybe 80 years back, anywhere in the world, it would have been impossible to see this way, audience sitting like this, girls and boys and sitting next to each other. It's just impossible to conceive anywhere, because this was the way life was organized. And so much has changed over the last century or century and a half. So this is how life has evolved. So it's a collective process. To break the forces of the downward gravitation when they grow too insistent. So what were the forces of downward gravitation during Sri Aurobindo's time? We can see that. Scientific materialism, Freudian psychoanalysis, the Marxist communism. 3 I can straight away name. The 3 asuric forces which had completely taken hold of the human mind. Even today they still, though they are taking a retreat. So these forces of downward gravitation, because they make a human being believe that there is nothing great about you. You are a biological creature. You are an animal, a social animal. So after you hypnotize by constantly saying you are a social animal, then you can't behave like human beings. If I am a social animal, automatically I'll behave like an animal. Maybe like a lion, but often like a snake, maybe like a monkey, because I'm an animal, you have declared. That's what Freudian psychoanalysis is about. There's nothing divine about us. That's what scientific materialism is about. We don't understand the grip and the power of these forces upon the human mind. So he breaks them. So you see now, scientists have begun to change. They talk about God, somewhere he has entered into every discourse. The psychoanalytical school has itself begun to change. Now people are accommodating all kinds of things, integral psychology and psychology based on the soul. All this has started coming up. So break the downward forces of gravitation. To prepare, however far off, the kingdom of God, the victory of the seekers of light and perfection, sadhunam, they are the sadhu, paritranaya sadhunam, and the overthrow of those who fight for the continuance of the evil and the darkness. So these are the works of the Avatar, and those who despair in times such as these. We don't know how beautifully, paradoxically, the divine is fulfilling his plan. Should I, shouldn't I? Okay, let me mention. Recent Bangladesh crisis. People say, this is happening, that is happening. I said, yes, don't you see it is waking up the sleeping lions. What was Hindu identified as? Pacifist. Everybody's opinion matters. I should be recognized as a good guy. Very tolerant, because then I'll get a stamp from the Western world. The tolerant. in brackets, foolish, cowardly. So, if you really say what is true Hindutva, Hindutva has never stood for injustice, true Hindutva. But wherever there is a call for Dharma, it stands. Because it's one of the part of the thing. So, divine is awakening everywhere. And that's what happened precisely in Bangladesh. I was feeling, why land where Durga has manifested, in that land, people are looking for refuge. What is Durga's army? Even one woman should be. And yesterday there was an image which was going viral. And I'm telling you how the divine work is going on. The image was of one lady. It needed just one woman. She was like crazy. She had picked up the axe and going around the street saying, "Come, who dares me, come. I'll face you." I don't know whether you've seen that image or not. One woman. And today we see lakhs of people rallying and rising up. They don't care what image you have of me. So this thing that the leonine aspect of manhood, we should also be there as part of human nature. Not that is everything. Gita is all about that. That rise up, face the battle, don't run away from the battle, don't escape, don't bring battles, don't yourself do things which are unjust and unworthy. But where there is something which opposes the march of truth, Dharma, then be ready to stand up. So there is no position like a neutral position in these matters. Generally it is okay, it's a good thing not to engage here there. It's not about activism, but wherever the destiny of the world is concerned. And he says all these are recognized objects of the descent of the avatar. And it is usually by his work that the mass of men seek to distinguish him, and for that they are ready to worship him. Sri Aurobindo, what he did during freedom struggle, how during the Second World War he clearly took a side. He didn't say, "I am not affected. I am a spiritual man, spare me. I am in my deep meditation." He took a side publicly. And it was a very dangerous thing to do at that point of time. To take a side publicly, even donated to the war fund. Same with freedom struggle. So this leaves an example for the race. And that is the mold in which we can grow. It is only the spiritual who see that this external avatarhood is a sign in the symbol of a human life, of the eternal inner Godhead making himself manifest in the field of their own human mentality and corporeality, so that they can grow into unity with that and be possessed by it. So, he leads the way and it awakens the soul of man which is ready. The divine manifestation of a Christ, Krishna, Buddha in external humanity has for its inner truth the same manifestation of the eternal avatar within in our own inner humanity. That which has been done in the outer human life of earth may be repeated in the inner life of all human beings. Today we are not going to finish the chapter, we'll stop here. But beautiful line of Sri Aurobindo I am reminded of. He says, see how the avatar calls the soul of man. And those who are ready, they hear the call. And he says in one of his messages, he says, I am not here to create mutts and sannyasis. I have not come here to create mutts and sannyasis of a certain Sri Aurobindo order. I am not here to create mutts and sannyasis. I have come to call the souls of the strong to the Leela of Krishna and Kali. And then he says, the happiest boy and the strongest girl in the crowd, that is what he has come to awaken us to. That joy which we can experience even in the midst of the battlefield. And that strength which helps us to face even the extreme challenge of adversity, death, disaster, catastrophe, and even ruin. We embrace as a boon from the mother of the worlds, which gives us an opportunity to free ourselves from those limitations of the ego. This is what the avatar is. And it's so important a conception, as we can see, not only for the Gita, but for Sri Aurobindo's yoga. Because he is, we can say, literally in the image of the Bible and the Gita and the Buddha. See, all three have said. Christ says, I am the way and I am the goal. Buddha says, Buddham Sharanam Gacchami, Sangam Sharanam Gacchami, Dharmam Sharanam Gacchami. Krishna says, Aham tva sarva papebhyo maukshishami masucha. Surrender to me. I'll free you of all sin and evil. Do not grieve. So equally we can say, and Sri Aurobindo has written a letter for all of us. The mother is the way and the mother is the goal. If she is attained, all is attained. On Sri Aurobindo's birthday, we can only be grateful to Sri Aurobindo for bringing this chapter literally in our hands. Okay. Gratitude.